Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and it's that time of the year. First off, the weather's changing, so that means I'm a little under the weather right now. My sinuses are acting up, so if I sound a little odd in this video, and well, the rest of the videos for this week, that's why. Secondly, it is the end of the year, which means it's time to go over my top 5 best ships of 2024. So these are, well, in my opinion, the best ships that were released in this year in the game. So, that's pretty self-explanatory from there on out. So let's go ahead and get on into it. First off, if you do find yourself enjoying this video at any point in it, please make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. All that jazz helps on the YouTube side of things. We must, of course, appease our algorithm overlords. But now, let's go ahead and get on into the list. Coming in at number 5, we have the Tier 10 Premium American Battleship, the Rhode Island. So, the Rhode Island was a very early ship in the year, released in January of 2024, originally in her little gambling box event that I unintentionally picked her up in, but I pretty much just held on to it, sat on it until she was released later in the year, around 4th of July, for outright purchase. And the Rhode Island is, well, what I said the Florida should be or could be in my Florida review video, which is essentially a very large cruiser in a battleship slot up there at Tier 10. So the Rhode Island has 12 14-inch guns that have very nice accuracy. She, of course, has very thin armor for being a Tier 10 battleship and low HP, but that's compensated for by her speed and agility. She also gets the engine boost where she can get up and rolling mighty fast, which definitely helps out with keeping her alive. This is a ship that is most definitely more cruiser than battleship. So if you try to play the Rhode Island like a traditional battleship and try to get in there and tank, it's not really going to work all that well. But if you play her like a large cruiser, more along the lines of something like, I guess you could say Hindenburg, maybe that second line cruiser that's zipping around in the back of the map, always just spamming HE, burning down targets, she works a lot better. Now, what's pretty neat about Rhode Island is that there's a couple different ways you can play her. You can play her like that, main battery, second line battleship or cruiser, or you could also go for a secondary build and play her like a more, I don't want to say more aggressive, but more nimble Georgia, if you really want to, although her armor is way worse than Georgia, so that's definitely the more risky between the two options, but it definitely can work if you are, well, either lucky enough or good enough to make it work. Myself, I play her like a main battery, large cruiser, spam HE. When you get in close into the enemy ships, load up that AP and those 12 14-inch guns, and then go to town. And she's a really, really good battleship if you play her like that. Kind of, I guess you could say more like the Sarugi, but, more with a focus on burning things down with her HE rather than, citadeling things with her AP. And it's just a fun ship to play. You also have radar on this battleship, which is kind of goofy that a Tier 10 battleship gets radar. It's just like, okay, battleships getting radar or something that's slowly becoming more common in game, but typically cruisers have that and a couple of destroyers here and there. But it surprisingly is a nice tool to use, especially when you are, of course, trying to run down a destroyer or something, which you can easily do in the Rhode Island thanks to her speed and maneuverability. You can radar them in their smoke. Then, surprise, here's 12 HE shells in your face. So she's a great ship, great for murdering destroyers, great for stopping cruiser broadsides with her AP, and then burning down battleships with her HE. Unfortunately, she isn't available for outright purchase at the moment, but if she ever does return, and you can just buy her outright, I would highly encourage you to do so. But again, remember, this is more like a cruiser than a battleship, so keep that in mind when you're playing your Rhode Island. I see so many Rhode Islands, especially when she first came out, from players that thought, oh, look, it's like Georgia, so we can be aggressive like Georgia. No, you can't. The armor is definitely not there for that, nor is the HP, even with the new HP flag. All right, going on down to number 4, we have another American battleship, the Tier 8 Premium American Battleship, the Tennessee. So the Tennessee is a very interesting American standard dreadnought. First off, it's a standard dreadnought all the way up at Tier 8, which is absolutely wild because standard dreadnoughts, they tend to peter out around 20 knots as their top speed. And that's with the tailwind and everything, right? I mean, like, I guess with the speed flag and brisk, you can get it up a little bit past 20 knots into that, 25-ish knot range, which is a little bit more viable. But it's still a slow target by Tier 8 standards, and it is a very big target by Tier 8 standards. So the Tennessee, it's the class that is, well, the California, she's a Tennessee class as well. So it's that, but so much better, because you get cruiser dispersion on your 12, 14-inch guns. Another American battleship with 12, 14-inch guns. I don't mean battle cruiser. I don't mean, highly, highly accurate battleship dispersion. I mean actual cruiser dispersion on 14-inch guns, which is crazy. Like, you have 12, 14-inch guns basically going, the shells are going where you aim, which means that when it comes to punishing broadsides, or dealing with cruisers that slip up, or even HE farming down other battleships, the shells are going to hit if your aim is good enough. And that is awesome. That's every battleship player's dream, right? My shell's actually going where I aim? That's amazing. And the Tennessee makes that happen. Now, of course, like I said, you give up a lot to get these guns. I mean, you're in a standard dreadnought at Tier 8, where at pretty much every other tech line in the game, except for the American battleship line, you've unlocked the fast battleships now, right? Or like the faster battle cruisers. And here you are in the Tennessee, just, petering around at 20 knots. So, yeah, you definitely have to be aware of what's going on the map. How's your flank going? You need to start to get out of there, because you've got to start thinking, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes ahead of what's happening right now, because it takes so long for you to get everywhere. Now, you do get the spotters, so that can help out a bit with, staying in the match. And given that the shells are so accurate, you can very much use the HE to great effect. So that can definitely help you stay relevant in the game when either, you get double up to tier 10, or you have to sling shells entirely across the map. You can't really depend upon the AP to really do its thing at that distance. You can fall back on the HE and just burn stuff down, because, again, the shells are going to be hitting with that dispersion. But she is a very excellent ship if you have good aim. I mean, the world's really your oyster with the Tennessee, but you also have to have very excellent map awareness as well. So yes, if you have a chance to pick up the Tennessee, I would highly recommend it. Alright, going on our way down now to our number 3 slot, we have the Tier 10 German premium destroyer, the Hoffmann. So the Hoffmann is a nice little German destroyer that's, kind of TLDR. It's a more comfortable Elbing or Schultz, depending upon what you want to look at it as. Most of the posts I read about the Hoffmann, everyone refers to her as like kind of a worse Elbing, even though it's it's a Schultz that has been up-tiered to Tier 10 rather than an Elbing with a different configuration. But for some reason, everyone calls it a Tier 10 Elbing, so whatever. But it is a very comfortable take on the German split destroyer line, the Elbing line. It's more standardized. See, the Elbing line is more about, everything's focused on their main guns with their crazy AP and their crazy accuracy. The Hoffmann, it's more like a very angry Z-52 is how I see it described most often by destroyer mains that have thousands and thousands and thousands of battles and destroyers in this game. And I can definitely see that, because it can do more destroyer things than the Elbing line can. You have more comfortable torpedoes, you have more usable HE, you don't have to worry about getting the absolutely mediocre HE alpha damage with the HE shells here, so they're actually viable to use, unlike the Elbings and most of the other German ships in the game. Their HE is pretty abysmal. Hoffmann doesn't have to worry about that, and it still gets that improved HE pin as well on top of that. And with torpedoes that, again, are more comfortable and more usable in comparison to, again, like the Elbing's torpedoes, right? So it's a more comfy take on a really nice and solid line, line that I've enjoyed playing to a great extent in my time with the game. So, when you take that, make it more comfortable, make it more usable, because that is one massive weakness about the Elbing line. It's that it's so specialized in punishing broadsides with their AP. It can't really do much else. And you shouldn't be diving into the caps with the Hoffmann anyway, but it can do more destroyer things than the Elbing line can. Running torpedo interference, actually going after destroyers even more comfortably so. Like, the Elbing could very well go after the destroyers, and so could the Schultz because of their crazy AP. But it's like, you can do that now with the HE and actually be breaking modules and stuff and still doing good damage on those enemy destroyers. Whereas before, of course, if you wanted to break modules and stuff, you'd be sacrificing your alpha damage, which is why most Elbing and Schultz players would keep their AP loaded anyway. But again, you want to be breaking the modules and stuff, making life miserable for the enemy destroyer player. But you can do that with the Hoffmann here, and again, it's just such a comfy little destroyer. Now, unfortunately, the only way you can get the Hoffmann is in the golden containers right now. She's not going to be available for quite some time after the end of the event. I'm not saying it would dump all your money into the game to get the Hoffmann right now. It is just a really great destroyer, in my opinion. And once it comes back for a normal purchase price, I would definitely recommend picking her up. Yeah, again, don't go throwing your money at the game right now. It's going to be back. Trust me. Don't give into the FOMO, even though I'm putting it on this list, right? It is great, but it's not worth, again, throwing away your life savings at this moment. All right, going our way down now to number 2. We have the Tier 10 Pan-American battleship, the Libertad. Now, if you didn't see this coming on this list, I don't know where you've been. But man, the Libertad line, what a surprise. So, when this line was originally announced, it was pretty eye-catching, right? Because you have basically Goliath caliber guns bolted up and down the sides of these ships as secondary guns, which is a little nuts. So it was like, oh, okay, those secondaries are going to be pretty mean, but I'm sure there's going to be some type of massive trade-off that's going to make playing the line a little rough, right? Well, at the time of recording, no, not really. The line's just kind of cracked because not only do you have these, heavy cruiser guns as secondary guns on your battleship, you also get the funny F button where once you get that bar filled up, you can buff out your secondaries to 15 kilometers and give the HE shells more damage and more penetration and a faster reload time. So it's just ridiculousness. And by the way, in order to fill up that bar, all you have to do is stack up potential damage or get main battery shells on target. Which, by the way, you have 10 16-inch guns, and if you manage to land, most of those shells on target, you can pretty much fill up the bar almost in one salvo. If you get lucky enough to land all 10, I do think it's like 90% filled. If RNG does so, smile upon thee, right? But those secondary guns are just so crazy. Not even when you have the F key going, you'll see them hitting the target for like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 damage a strike. Then once you hit the funny F button, you're chunking targets for like 5, 6, 7,000 damage, depending on how many of your shells are hitting at once. It's just so utterly ridiculous. But, I mean, like, my god, it's such fun in asymmetrics right now, which is, I believe, what you're watching as background footage for the Libertad section in this video. But in random battles, my god, I mean, like, these things are nuts, just on the secondaries alone. Add to the fact that they get the Vermont acceleration, so they just kind of leave when the match starts. You see them just, floor it, and they'll already be halfway to the cap before anyone has a chance to do anything. They're also incredibly nimble, which is kind of cracked that these ships are quick to accelerate and nimble. Now, they do have lower HP than their standard Tier 10 counterparts, like Libertad's got 85,000 HP, which is about 20,000 less than what you'll find most Tier 10 battleships at. So it's like, okay, you get a little bit of a break there, but their armor tends to be good enough to where, they'll avoid getting absolutely deleted in cases where some other battleships would be utterly crippled or, absolutely deleted in. But again, you still have that lower HP to work with. I'm sure the line's probably going to get nerfed in some way, shape, or form in the future. And many will blame me for speaking it into existence because I say it pretty much every time I talk about the Pan American battleships. But yeah, they are a little cracked right now, but they're still so much fun to play. especially if you're someone that loves brawling. These are probably some of the, well, not probably, they are some of the best brawlers in the game at the moment, but we'll see how long they stay there, right, until Wargame brings down the nerf hammer on them. It's also even more insane if you do have Joaquim, the unique commander for the Libertad line. He gives them another buff to their reload time once you get 175 shell hits between the main and secondary guns. So that's just absolutely goofy. Alright, and now we come down to our number 1 slot. And that is the Tier 10 Special American Battleship, the Wisconsin. What a surprise, the Battleship Main's top 5 ships of the year list is mostly battleships, and the American Battleship, guy is also, putting an American Battleship as number 1. Big surprise here. But no, really, the Wisconsin really does earn this slot, in my humble opinion. The Wisconsin is great for not only being, well, an amazing dockyard this year, but also just being an excellent ship. She's also in my top 5 ships of 2024 video last week. That list is more about ships that, kind of represent what happened in the game that year. This list is the ships that are just excellent, and the Wisconsin is very much excellent and deserves to be on both lists, in my humble opinion. So, since we talked about it last week, I won't spend too much time talking about it here. Most of you are pretty familiar with the Wisconsin either way. It's a turbocharged Iowa at Tier 10. It's a dockyard ship back in April. If you had the West Virginia 44, you could get her completely for free, because the West Virginia 44 was the midpoint reward for the Wisconsin dockyard. And if you picked her up before then, well, you got the 2 stages you need to complete the Wisconsin dockyard in exchange for the West Virginia 44 that you already purchased. So that was a pretty nice deal. And out of the dockyard, you got an excellent ship. Dockyard ships are usually either a hit or miss. There's a very few that are kind of like just okay. And well, from what I see from the player base's reaction, on the various spots around the internet where they voice their opinion, that seems to be the take on the dockyard ships. And Wisconsin was an absolute home run. You got an Iowa with the combat instructions to give her faster reload. Those slightly different shells from the Iowa, where they get the better air drags, they have better pins, and it's just a thing of beauty when you get the Wisconsin going and it really starts putting in the work. It's always cool that a real still historical ship gets represented in game, and it gets represented in such a well way as well. So an excellent ship, it's a dockyard ship, so unfortunately, it probably won't be back in anything outside of Santa containers, and maybe they'll bring back the dockyard for it. They did redo the Puerto Rico dockyard, but I doubt they'll redo the Wisconsin dockyard. So if you have her, you got one hell of a ship. If you pick her up in a Santa container this year, I don't even know if she's in the Santa containers this year, but if she is, and you roll one in a Santa container, you have absolutely scored a home run here. It's more of a the Iowa is more of like a mid-ish range battleship. That's where they do best at. This is more of a mid to longer-ish range battleship with the improved air drag and all that jazz on the shells. So that's where you really want to play the Wisconsin. Look for those cruisers that are showing broadside, those broadside battleships. Let your 9/16-inch American AP shells do their thing on their broadsides, and you'll be having a great time in the Wisconsin. So guys, that is it for my top 5 ships of 2025. Let me know in the comments down below, what are your top 5 ships of 2025? I'm sure they're probably quite different from mine. Obviously, I'm a dirty, filthy battleship main, right? So I have my biases. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I am going to pop a couple of NyQuils and going to bed now. So hope you guys have a great Monday and a wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.